so mad? Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started. Didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating. Don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient. Come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it. I hope that you ready. So mad cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started. I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating. Don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient. Come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it. I hope that you ready to clash. Yeah. Graduated from the streets at the top of my class. You on the road and let's get it. I told you I'd live it. All you had to do is just ask. I know before I was chillin', just trying to get millions. Now all of that shit in the past. I take it up to the ceiling, however you willin'. Just so that you ready for class. Run down, I do this shit with no mask. If they won't call it a race, we gon' lap them. Cry like a baby when you get back at them. They here for the now, but they never gon' last. Wise, flow through my life like a turtle, but you get too close and I'm ready to snap. Rules to the game and they all universal. If you break a rule then you never come back. Living my life, I'm just chillin'. Big plate, I'm gonna eat, they gonna eat out the trash. Once they find out you a clown, gotta leave out of town and you never come back. I sit around many counters, I'm loving the sound that it make when it get to a stack. And I show nothing but love, but if you a hater, then fuck ya, I know I so mad. Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready. So mad, cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready to clash.
100K play, honey bun K, you don't want smoke with this right here, know what you say, swing by your way, get caught in my headlights like dear, watch what you say, don't become prey, internet niggas is so damn weird, I'm from the Bay, he from upstate, told you before that this all flow so sick, no suit, big business, no suit, sedan truck, no coupe, long leg room, big shoes, mirror crop my mood, all my ops is food, all my ops was fools, hard cold like ice cubes, always woke, no snooze, all this smoke, no booze, all good days, no blues, except for what I got in pocket, cause you know I'm gon' get it, leave me alone with your home, fuses get blown, cause I'm gonna grow in it, I stay with them plans, you stay with them Zans, so you might be gone in 4 minutes, don't blame me for all of your goals unachieved, you just a whole nigga.
Why they so mad? Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready. So mad, cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tag. I spin the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready to clash.
Alright, hot dogs, welcome back. It's your boy Spider Pig, aka TWP, aka that pig with a double G. Hey, I think
This is not marketing.
You Cayete. Let's go to our playlist because I know what we're doing now. We're gonna do some Batman today. It's Wednesday, so while y'all I got Uncle Ray say, shout out to Big Homie. He out here getting it in. I need people around me that do what I do, therefore we fuck with YouTubers. And let me see where it's at. Boop, here we go. 3 of them for you. See what I'm saying? Shouts out to these summer videos because I'm gonna try to get as many done daily as you because I'll be over here. Well, Thursday because I'll be live.
Okay, so we are finally getting back into the Abyss storyline from Joshua Williamson's Batman because it just finished, right? In the first video that we did, we basically covered this idea of like the return of Batman Incorporated. For those of you guys who don't know what that meant, the long story being short is basically Batman took like the Batman concept worldwide and just set up like different Batman teams in different parts of the world, some of which were rolled over into the main family in Gotham City, others just kind of continued on out there. It was really just based on the popularity of the character when DC introduced those individuals. But essentially what had happened is that something had gone on where Batman Incorporated, right, these people out there, where they had essentially killed a guy by the name of Abyss. And so the result of this is that Batman is currently investigating it, only to find out that because he had basically lost his fortune due to the events of the Joker War and Joker and basically Punchline essentially taking all his money, that Batman Incorporated had basically lost their funding as well, only to turn around and find themselves funded by Lex Luthor. And so that's where we are here at the moment, where basically Batman and Lex Luthor are essentially meeting, and we're sort of learning what's going on behind the scenes, that Lex Luthor was funding Batman Incorporated. And so that's kind of the funny thing, is that Lex Luthor really seems to be pretty legal here, right? In the sense that he's like, I'm cooperating with law enforcement. I fully support them and this city, right? Like I'm basically a legit guy. Now this is done from the perspective in that following his experiences where he had basically been like a version of Superman, albeit one that was technologically based, where he had actually been Darkseid at one point in time, that if you guys recall the events of like Forever Evil, when essentially the crime syndicate invaded the Earth and that all the superheroes were essentially captured, and Lex Luthor had to basically bring together villains in order to turn them into heroes in order to basically save the world and the heroes themselves, that he's had a lot of lessons over the course of this time. And one of those lessons is that he essentially has turned over a new leaf, right? He's basically gone legit. But in the middle of this meeting, of course, you end up having the cops who show up, they realize it's a Batman and they just open fire, right? It's really just kind of like this kill on sight order. Now, of course, Bruce Wayne basically throws down a smoke bomb and essentially everybody ends up, basically, blinded and whatnot. And then he essentially preserves the crime scene. And like, that's basically it, right? Everything's kind of sorted. And so following that, you basically switch up with Lex Luthor inviting Bruce Wayne to dinner. Now, one of the things to remember is Lex Luthor knows Bruce Wayne's Batman, and he's known for a very long time, right? That's not really a relatively new thing. But he kind of tells this bit of a story about a bottle of wine and how expensive it is and kind of pours it out. It's not really a necessary thing. What is important here is he says, I know you're broke. Like, I know you lost everything financially. I'm currently funding Batman Incorporated. Let me fund you. Like, in effect, he's giving Batman a job offer, right? He's like, come and work for me. Like, work for me as Batman. You'll stay in Gotham City. You'll do your thing. You can run it however you want to, but I'll be the financier, right? I'll be the one to financially back you. Of course, it also pisses him off. But it's one of these things where Bruce Wayne just doesn't trust Lex Luthor, where like, no matter what goes on, that regardless of what kind of perception he puts on, that Lex Luthor is always involved in some shady stuff, right? There's always something that's just not right here. And so what you end up getting is basically this body of Abyss that's being examined by Batman, and at the same time is supposed to be in the morgue. Now, what ends up happening is, of course, the body that was left in the morgue was basically a decoy, right? Like, what happens is it seems like Bruce Wayne has his hands on the actual body of Abyss, but then suddenly everything starts going dark. Batman goes to throw some flashbangs to try to bring in some light, but essentially everything's just kind of darkened out. And none of his lights really seem, or none of his tools seem to work, right? Night vision, infrared, none of it works. But that's when he's met by the arrival of Abyss, right? He can see himself, he just can't see anything else around him. And so in that moment, that's when he realizes, okay, so like Abyss is here, right? He's like, Abyss is a guy who's actually alive. This body is a fake body. He picked up on that pretty fast because Abyss was killed not too long ago. This body is a person who's basically been decaying for a couple months, so the timetables just simply don't add up. But he's kind of like, okay, cool. So like, it's kind of one of those Dark Knight Rises kind of things, like, you adopted the dog, that kind of a thing, right? Where he's like, look, I'm Batman. I fight in the dark. So having darkness here is not going to do you any good. The thing about this though, is that Abyss is, he's not your average bear. This is not just some average guy using the darkness to his own tools. Instead, he kind of taunts him to a degree when Batman asks him, like, who are you? He's like, I'm a creature of the darkness, right? Born in the shadows, just like you. And he's like, the voices in the dark are my only master. I don't work for Lex Luthor. Because that's the initial response to the question of Bruce Wayne is, how are you involved with Lex Luthor? Like, do you work for him? And so ultimately, he actually ends up managing to overcome Batman. And the reason for this is because he's fast and he's silent. He's almost ninja in nature. And it's really something that Batman hasn't seemed to counter before. More so than that, it's not simply an attack on Bruce Wayne. That what happens is because of the scythe he's using and the way he's able to injure Bruce Wayne, he basically blinds him, right? He leaves Bruce Wayne blinded. And that's literally one of the things, right? Like this cop he's been working with, she comes running up on him. She's like, look, we got to get out of here, right? The whole building's getting ready to go on lockdown. We have to get out of here now. And he says, I can't, right? Everything is too dark. That he has in effect lost his sight as a result of the actions or the injury that was done to him by Abyss, right? That Abyss has some kind of tool at his disposal when it comes to this stuff. Now, the first thing Batman has to do here is figure out how to reverse this blindness, right? It's the first thing he has to do. Figure out how to get this blindness removed and how to essentially regain his ability to see. And he was just like, you know, as far as I can tell, there's no real way to do this, but I need to get to a place that's dark. I need to get to a place where I can basically operate without anybody knowing who I am or anybody being able to see me, and that even includes the cop herself, right? So of course, they end up going to her apartment, which is kind of a weird place. Abyss also catches up to Lex Luthor, which is something that happens. We don't really get a whole lot here. We basically just get him like powering up this Batman suit, which really looks amazing, right? Like Lex Luthor essentially becomes Batman, which is pretty legit. But the thing about this is that Lex Luthor is not on the same level as Bruce Wayne when it comes to like fighting and when it comes to just tactics and so on. So he is seemingly overcome by Abyss pretty fast, right? We don't see what happens. We just see the two of them engage in a fight, and that's seemingly it. The other thing here is that ultimately Bruce Wayne can't really seem to find a way to heal his eyesight. And so he's ultimately just kind of stuck there being blind. And so he says, okay, fine. Then the next thing we have to do here is get a hold of Batman Incorporated. We have to find out why the body in the morgue was a decoy, right? Like there's something bigger going on here, and they know what's going on, right? Like we have to know why they went after Abyss. They have all the answers to the questions that we have. And so one of the things that this detective says is like, look, Lex Luthor funds all the prisons, right? State-of-the-art security, all that kind of stuff. And the warden who runs it is in no doubt trying to make sure that he stays in Lex Luthor's good graces. So what's likely going to happen to your members of Batman Incorporated is they're all going to be shuffled off to solitary confinement, right? 23-hour lockdown, if not 24-hour lockdown, just kind of, you know, consistently. You're never going to be able to get to them. The only way to access them is when they're being transferred. And that's exactly what happens. That Batman basically catches up to them as they're all being transferred to solitary confinement, takes out all the lights, and where they initially think it's Abyss due to the fact that they've encountered Abyss before, and this whole scenario unfolds the same way, Batman appears and says, no, this is my move, right? And initially he tells them, like, get to the roof. Like, you need to get to the roof and we need to have a discussion. The response to them is, no, that's not going to happen. They basically turn against Batman, right? Like, he's like, look, I know you guys are all innocent. I know what's going on with Abyss, or at least I seem to have some idea with Abyss. I know he's not dead, right? That means you all didn't kill him. We need to go talk. And where it's kind of like where they ask him, like, why are you talking weird? That kind of a thing, where he seems a little off kilter, seems a little strange. At the end of the day, he starts kind of interrogating them, right? Treating them almost like people he doesn't trust, right? He's like, at least tell me how Lex Luthor's involved with Batman Incorporated. Why would you work for someone like him? Is it the money? And the reality here is the reason why Batman Incorporated was formed, or at least the reason why these individuals were chosen, is because money is not their god. They don't pursue money. It's not the thing they're looking for. They're not mercenaries. They do what they do because they legitimately believe that it's the right thing to do. And so because of that, they're just kind of like, no. You know, they almost kind of take offense to it. You know, it was like, Lex Luthor gave us more than money. He gave us a mission. And then when Batman asked, like, what mission was Lex Luthor give you? They're like, why do you care, right? Like, we didn't need you before and we don't need you now. And they ultimately end up attacking him, right? Like, Batman has to fight his own organization, right? Batman versus Batman Incorporated. And it's cool to see because he is able to overcome them to a degree. Like, the cop who's in his earpiece talking to him is trying to tell him what to do, and he's like, stop, right? Like, you're a distraction. You know, Batman focusing on his sound or focusing on his hearing is able to basically pick up where each one of these guys are coming from and is able to counter them accordingly, but just really kind of lashes out here, right? Like talk to me, right? Why would you work with Lex Luthor, a Batman that's that shady? But then suddenly the cops basically come out of nowhere, and then there's like, let's get to the roof, right? They basically take off. Once they arrive up on the rooftop, of course, him being surrounded, Lex Luthor arrives on the scene. And that's when, of course, we end up finding one, Lex Luthor survived, and two, seemingly Lex Luthor is not blind. At the same time that happens, you end up having Abyss, who arrives on the scene as well. And ultimately, what Lex Luthor says here is the only possible way for you to stop Abyss is to basically come with me, right? Like, you have to work for me. I can provide you the tools, the assets, the things that you need. It's very, very cryptic and it's very weird because what it looks like is Lex Luthor has essentially set all this up. And the response of Batman is like, what games are you playing, right? What did you do? How are you involved in this? But ultimately, the members of Batman Incorporated chime in and say, like, you don't understand it, Batman. Like, you don't get what's going on. Lex Luthor may very well have funded our whole Batman Incorporated situation here following you losing all your money, but Abyss is our leader. And that's where Abyss says, join us in the dark, Batman, and help us kill Lex Luthor, right? Help us turn against this guy and destroy him. That's their mission. That's their secret mission, is to kill Lex Luthor. And the crazy thing about this is that as the fight breaks out, and as initially Batman begins to join Lex Luthor, the two of them fighting side by side against Abyss and Batman Incorporated, you of course end up finding out that this police officer working alongside with Batman is calling backup and is like, the cops are coming and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately Abyss is like, excellent, right? Like, if you provided an audience, we can provide the show. And he's like, Batman Incorporated, prove your loyalty, kill Lex Luthor. And so the fight breaks out and it's pretty intense, right? This is a pretty extreme fight. And it's just one of those things where literally Lex Luthor points out that Batman's blind. And everybody's like, wait a minute, what? Like Batman's blind right now. Like, what? Hold on. Like, what in the hell? Like, Lex Luthor says, okay, like, I prepared myself for this fight. Batman says, one of the members of Batman Incorporated says, like, look, I'm sorry that it came down to this, Batman. And the response of Bruce is, don't be. And he says, Batman Incorporated, code Club of Heroes. And essentially, depending on how you feel about it, it was all an undercover operation. I feel like Joshua Williamson wrote himself into a corner here. That what's basically going on, or what basically seemed to have been going on, is that Batman Incorporated have been working with Batman the entire time. That the reality is that they were all kind of working together to basically bring out Abyss, to trick Abyss into believing that he had the upper hand, only to find out that he didn't. And ultimately, the thing about Abyss is he's able to take them all out, essentially single-handedly. The other thing that goes on here is that Abyss says, we all want to be Batman, right? No longer a victim. Then Lex Luthor came to me with an offer, Bruce Wayne, the tools to become a new kind of Batman and the training. But I was just the start of Lex's experiment. He thought he could find cities full of crime and create his own Batman, one that was loyal to him. But then he abandoned me, left me to show this city how scary it can be in the dark. Lex knew his little experiment got away from him and sent a whole team of Batmen to stop me. That in essence, Lex Luthor was the one that caused all of this. That the way this timeline seems to have played out is that with the absence of Batman being able to fund Batman Incorporated and knowing that the loyalties of Batman Incorporated were not to the highest bidder, that what Lex Luthor saw was an opportunity to basically use experimentation, right? Probably gene modification or something like that, to basically create a new kind of Batman and then use this guy Abyss as what's basically a test subject. For reasons that aren't necessarily explained here, Lex Luthor abandoned the whole idea of Abyss. Now, it may be one of these things where this is all what happened in the early days of Batman Incorporated, and that it doesn't really seem to have been involved in anything recent. That Lex Luthor abandoning what was going on with Abyss and abandoning creating his own Batman in different cities, kind of his own version, quote unquote, of Batman Incorporated, that was all abandoned because of the fact that he basically turned over a new leaf. And that what Abyss is experiencing here is basically rejection, right? Like, he's angry because he felt rejected by Lex Luthor. Whatever the case happens to be, that ultimately Lex essentially created this whole thing, and that the operation was to basically find Abyss, bring him out, and then ultimately capture him. Now, one of the things here is that the nature of quote unquote this undercover operation, that while Batman is the one pulling the strings, it didn't necessarily seem to be something that they had worked out ahead of time. What was going on here is that Batman Incorporated was basically being loyal to Batman himself, right? And we'll kind of talk about why here in a second, that they displayed this loyalty in a way that Batman would understand. But ultimately, Batman basically ends up grabbing the suit of Lex Luthor because that seems to be the thing that protected him and kept him from going blind, indicating that the ability of Abyss to make Batman go blind is technologically based. So ultimately, using the technology in Luthor's suit, Batman undoes his own blindness and then in turn tracks down Abyss and literally just pummels him, right? Like, using a combination of his own technology to basically create what is in effect a kind of white room, a place where Abyss can't hide in the shadows, there's nowhere for him to go. That is about as fair of a fight as it can possibly be. And Batman overcomes him swiftly, right? Exceedingly fast. Like, it's just one of those things where Abyss never really had a chance in the first place. But ultimately, when Batman overcomes him, he essentially tells Abyss that he had lost sight of Batman Incorporated, right? That Lex Luthor had essentially preyed on that. And he says, I didn't make you, but I can still help you. And Abyss says, I only wanted to be like you, Batman. Instead, I'm always in the dark. And he says, forever. And he ultimately ends up throwing down a kind of bomb that just shrouds the entire area in darkness and then ultimately makes his escape. And Batman, with no choice, ultimately ends up leaving and and going back to visit with the rest of Batman Incorporated. Now, this is where we kind of get what was going on, is the sense that Batman Incorporated was always loyal to Batman. There was never really an instance when they had actually sided with Lex Luthor. If anything, them siding with Lex Luthor was them kind of conducting their own investigation to a degree to find out how Lex Luthor and Abyss were basically connected. And that once they were caught, they ultimately knew Batman would catch up with them and Batman would continue the investigation where they had essentially left off. And so when ultimately they're like, I mean, like, how did you know that we were basically working with you, right? When they kind of, when they ultimately abandoned Lex and Lex is back to doing his own thing and doesn't really have his own Batman Incorporated, when they're like, how did you know that we were on your side? Batman says, because when we were in the prison, you guys are all amazing fighters. It's one of the reasons why I have you here is Batman Incorporated. And when you guys attacked me, it was obvious you were holding back. You were pulling your punches because you knew that Abyss was watching you. Like, you knew that's what was going on. They were using just essentially fighting styles and body language to communicate with Batman that, hey man, we're on your side here. You just need to be aware of the fact that we're doing this to essentially put on a show. Now, this is a very, very important thing because what it speaks to is, one, how well Batman and the other members of Batman Incorporated know each other, but two, the training that went into them operating as a team that knows how to communicate with Batman. Because it's not one of those things where, like, if they knew Abyss was watching, they could like punch him, they could kick him, and then whisper stuff in his ear while they're doing it, like, Abyss is watching, you know, and then like that kind of a thing. They couldn't necessarily do that. It had to look real, right? Because Abyss is very, very capable, and he would have picked up on that almost instantaneously. Like, he would have realized, okay, they're alerting Batman to what's going on in terms of all this stuff. And so ultimately, when Bruce asked them, like, why didn't you call me for help, right? Why didn't you hit me up and let me know what was going on? Their response is, would you have done the same thing, right? Communication is a two-way street, home slice. Would you have talked to us, right? Is that something that you would have done? And where he's just kind of like, I probably wouldn't have. And he's like, good job, guys. I'll be in touch, right? I'm needed elsewhere. You guys continue on, do your thing. Great job. Awesome. Okay, cool. Peace. And then like basically bails, basically takes off. Now we do get a couple epilogues here. One of them is that he contacts Ghostmaker, if you guys recall him, and says like, I need you to keep an eye on something for me, but we don't necessarily find out exactly what's going on, right? There is the Batman annual for 2022, but that doesn't go on sale until the end of May. So we won't know exactly what's going on until then. You do end up having this cop that it basically investigates LexCorp and then kind of asks the question what Lex Luthor was really up to. The big takeaway from all this is that Prometheus is basically speaking to an unnamed person and saying, our people have confirmed that Batman has returned to Gotham City. And this unnamed person says, make sure my secret society monitors his movements, right? The secret society of supervillains. Now, Prometheus himself is basically a guy with the helmet he wears. It allows him to essentially analyze and then understand the movements of people he's fighting against. So think of him like a technological version of Taskmaster for those of you guys who are coming from Marvel Comics. But the person he's speaking to is basically King Deathstroke. That Deathstroke has reformed the secret society of supervillains and that he intends to launch a shadow war against Batman, which I'm really excited to see what that looks like. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
Yes, you read that title correctly. Batman's most biggest fan is his most powerful enemy. Joker, Riddler, the Court of Owls, Bane. None of them stand close to the power of this imp from the 5th dimension. Get ready because this is Batmite Explained.
Imposing, but to Dracula.
Batmite's an imp from the 5th dimension that first appears in Detective Comics 267. This imp first let it be known that he is Batman's biggest fan. When he first appeared, Bruce speculated him to be some random elf with a Batman costume, but Batmite immediately corrects them on this. He explains how he comes from another dimension and he's been watching Batman for years to come, and now he's here to help Batman with his immense powers. But Batmite's way of helping and having fun with the Caped Crusader is a bit dangerous. You see, Batmite came down to Earth to become a trio with Bruce and Robin, but they deny him because him as a creature is unusual. After this, Batman and Robin do their crime-fighting business and Batmite leaves. But he didn't actually leave, he just went invisible on Bruce's car. Now when Batman's about to catch the criminals he's chasing, the bridge that they're on starts shaking, making Bruce and Robin do much more physical activities to defeat the enemy. And then it's revealed this was all all part of Batmite's plan. Now this is an important factor of Batmite's character. When Bruce is finishing a job too easily, his biggest fan will up the competition with some type of obstacle, which not only helps Batman perform better feats, but also brings fun and entertainment to Batmite. Here's a perfect example of this. World's Finest, issue 113. So just like Batman having a fan from the 5th dimension, so does Superman. His name, Mr. Mxyzptlk. And in this comic, these two have a crossover. Now the aspect that I want to look at in this story is when robots were taking over the city, and of course Batman and Robin are trying to take them down. Now Clark sees that they're struggling and he gets the Rock to try and destroy the robots. And of course, Batmite intervenes. He matter manipulates the Rock into a comic figure so Superman can't take down the robots. Batmite explains he did this because he wants Batman and Robin doing the best feats so Superman can't intervene. I mean, the little guy admires Bruce so much, he thinks anything Superman can handle, Batman can too. Now after this, Mr. Mxyzptlk appears, and him and Batmite have a fight off. Now it ends in a stalemate with Mixie admitting they're relative, and at the very end of the comic, we see Batmite admit he's gonna always help Bruce get his best feats. I also want to note Batmite is only referencing anytime he interacts with Bruce. Now why do I consider Batmite a enemy? Although he has good intentions, anytime he does them it always ends up dangerous. So I wouldn't consider him somebody like the Joker or Bane, but his attraction for Bruce does make him a threat sometimes. Now even though Batmite's a imp from the 5th dimension, that doesn't mean his life is easy. His plane still has sinister activity, and the villain I'm talking about is the most darkest and evilest Banemite. So to understand Banemite, we first have to understand the Mite Dimension. We first get an explanation on the Mite Dimension in Legends of the Dark Knight issue 38. Essentially, Batmite captures this drug addict and shows him the Mite Dimension. First, he explains Batmite got his name because he constantly watches over Bruce in windows, but then we see his hometown is filled with heroes parallel to the regular ones, as well as villains. Robin Mite, Joker Mite, Catwoman Mite, Penguin Mite, even reenacting the hero versus villain idea. But it's not limited to just that, we also see cosmic beings, such as the Spectre Mite, and even the Endless when we see the Sandman Mite or Death of the Endless Mite. And there is many more to go through. But nonetheless, what we came here to look at is the main villain, Banemite. Banemite was originally born inside of a cage, tortured with ice water every single day. And every single year on his birthday, he'll be transported to an even bigger cage. Now through this act of torture, Banemite's only option was to get stronger, but he also grew a ton of hatred. Now how does any of this connect to this guy being the main villain? Well, this all begins in Batman Mite Fall. Mite Fall is a direct continuation of when Batmite showed the drug addict the Mite Dimension. Essentially, Bane and the rest of Batmite's rogue gallery from the 5th dimension broke out of the Arkham Asylum from the 5th dimension. Yeah, the 5th dimension is very parallel to the regular Earth. Now while Batmite is taking his rogues back to Arkham Asylum, Banemite takes advantage of this and amplifies himself with Toxic. Yeah, here in the 5th dimension, they don't call it Toxin, they call it Toxic. You know, after this amplification, he was also getting amped by his hatred for the world, and he had a master plan to take over the universe. So he goes back to his Mite Dimension, starts beating up all the heroes, and even when the Superman mites try to take him down, he punches them through time and black holes. Now Banemite was eventually defeated when Batmite created a overbat suit for the drug addict and he defeated him. So now that we got the whole Mite Dimension and their most powerful villain explained, I want to tap into the sheer power of Batmite because that's kind of the whole point of this video. One perfect example of this would be in Scooby-Doo Team Up issue 99. Batman is yet again fighting crime, this time with the gang. As normal, mysterious activity is the situation at hand. Batman's chasing after one of his villains, and the Scooby-Doo gang helps them. But what even radared them to go to Gotham in the first place is because there was a tweet by Robin. A tweet which Robin never made, so he just assumed he was hacked. Until we see multiple iterations of Batman and multiple iterations of Scooby-Doo. Now at first I thought this was just another Batmite shenanigans, but then we see it's much more. And the answer is revealed to us by Velma and Batman. After Velma and Bruce figure out the strange activity, they call the person out on it. And at that point, we see it was Batmite and Scooby-Mite. Yeah, so Scooby-Doo also has his own fifth dimensional imp because he fanboys over Scooby-Doo, just like Batmite fanboys over Batman. So the reason why Batmite and Scooby-Mite are here is to celebrate the anniversary of Batman meeting the gang. So the imps first show off their power by teleporting other iterations of Scooby and Batman from other universes to their universe, transporting the candy versions of the characters, and even teleporting the DC writers into their world with a snap. After this, they say the possibilities are endless. They can bring an infinite amount of Scooby-Doos to this world and erase them from that plane just as easily. Now after this, Batmite and Scooby-Mite thought of a great idea and teleport all the well-known iterations of Scooby-Doo. We have the live-action form, which is from the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie. The classic form, which is from, you know, the original animated series. The garbage reboot from Cartoon Network, which nobody likes. And what I'm trying to get at is that basically this guy can access other universes, other networks like Cartoon Network, and just bring you to his universe and then just remove you when he wants to. It's BFR hacks that work on a multiversal scale, and this is still nothing close to the bigger feats that Batmite has done. Now at this part in the video, I really want to go into the aspect of meta. Now if you don't know what meta is, it's basically a word to portray characters interacting with our reality. Characters like Deadpool, whom are popular representatives of this concept, do stuff like break the fourth wall.
Oh, hello. I know, right? Whose balls did I have to fondle to get my very own movie?
Now, something like breaking the fourth wall is a very simple and basic way of metafiction. And even one may argue it's not that powerful, it's kind of just like a hyper-awareness. But Batmite's meta feats are far higher than just simply talking to the readers. I mean, we can start off very basic and simple. Let's take a look at Detective Comics issue 482. Now in this story, we jumpstart with Batmite being used as a conduit to express what happens in the narrative. Now after this, Batmite goes to the DC offices and starts writing his own script to tell the writer to make him a comic with Batman. Now Batmite proceeds to outline his own story and then teleports all the things necessary to make a DC story, like the artists, the writers, the producers, everyone, and then forces them to write this story for him whilst threatening them with Mr. Mixie as Pitalik. Because, you know, this guy Mr. Mixie was punching writers if they didn't listen to his commands. Another really quick example of Batmite's metafiction is Ambush Bug issue 3. Now it's essentially Ambush Bug going through the history of the universe, going through continuity, and when he meets Batmite, he not only shows that he's narratively aware of his appearances, but all the retcons that the writers did to Batman. And he also shows that he's dating Starmite, which is Starfire from the fifth dimension. Now there's more quick examples when he does these minor fourth wall breaks, but I want to get into the more profound feats. And I think we should begin in the 2019 Superman/Batman Annual 1. Now this story starts with young imps playing with Batman and Superman toys until they start fighting over who would win between the two. Now Mixie explains to them, how are you supposed to learn how to manipulate the fabric of time and space if you can't even share? And this is nothing new. Mixie and Batmite are very well known for manipulating all of time and space. Now after, Mixie tells him that Superman would obviously beat Batman, but Batmite disagrees heavily. Now they can't convince each other, so they decided to become the writer and create a story on how either or would win. So Batmite begins first for us. He flips the comic page to a setting where the multiverse is getting destroyed. Now Batmite decided to make the multiverse get destroyed because Superman is an anomaly, and now Batmite is trying to kill Superman because of this, and Superman is deflecting all his contingencies until Batman kills him with a gigantic red sun. Now Mixie heavily disagrees with this writing because the red sun would not only kill the world but also kill Batman, so it's not even a win. Now Mixie begins to edit the plot with Superman just chasing after Batman. Now they were once in the Batcave, but Mixie didn't like that, so he altered the plot once again to a different setting, being in the Fortress of Solitude. Now Bruce and Clark start to realize these narrative changes and even feel like they're being controlled to kill each other. And at that point, Mixie was pretty mad. He writes himself inside the story story tells Batman he's a cheater and writes Superman to kill him. Now this really sets Batmite off because Mixie copied his method of killing, and they essentially are ended up in a tie, so they need a tiebreaker and ask the kids who wins. But the kids didn't care, so they asked the action figures. So we then see these action figures are actually sentient, and they respond by saying nobody won. And Bruce then tells Mixie that the stories were rigged from the start, so it doesn't even count. So Mixie gets mad at Bruce, so he rips him apart, which makes Batmite mad, so he rips up Clark apart, and then send the two back to their home dimension. And it's then revealed that this was the actual Superman and Batman, transformed into action figures by cosmic gods for their playground, which is very impressive because Superman fights against multiversal beings all the time, and Batmite's just turning him to action figures like it's nothing. Now this isn't the only time these guys have shown to have plot manipulation. Mr. Mixie Pitalik, somebody who is equal to Batmite, has done it many more times. So although this isn't a direct Batmite feat, you can still apply it to him because they're equals. This feat is very direct and portrays the concept perfectly. And this all begins in Batman/Superman issue 22. Now, Batman/Superman issue 22 is very meta. I mean, we immediately start with Calendar Man being teleported to the 5th dimension, and then Mr. Mixie gives him the abilities to jump through panels. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about. As we can see here, he's fighting a criminal, then next thing you know, he's looking at the other side of the comic and he sees the Fortress of Solitude. Taking advantage of this, he jumps across the page and sneaks up on Batman and Superman, leaving them in confusion, punching him where he can't even see him, and then forcing Superman to attack his future self in the next panel. Now the most important thing that I want to look at is that Mr. Mixie gives him a pen. Now with this pen, he's able to easily configure the story. As we see here, he draws an X and then the Batarang disappears. Now Calendar Man is eventually defeated when he accidentally draws off his arm with the pen. But we still see at the end of the story Mixie standing outside the panels and essentially becoming a writer. And at the very end, he yells at us for even reading the stories because we know that Batman and Superman are always gonna win. Now I want to take a look at two more instances that involve Batmite and Mr. Mixie. And why not begin with our first one being the journey to the 6th dimension. Now, the journey to the 6th dimension is a humongous arc that portrays a bad side of Mr. Mixie. What I mean by this is that we usually see Mr. Mixie messing with Superman and that's it. But this run takes the character in a more cosmological perspective. For some really fast context, Mr. Mixie's working for somebody called the World Forger, and his mission is to erase the entire multiverse. Mixie first destroys the Justice League Tower and goes to such a powerful state where he takes over the writer's pencil and erases existence. The totality of the multiverse was getting undone by Mr. Mixie. So things like the entire Speed Force, every Lantern Ring combined, and many other powerful forces are now on the breach of annihilation, and the smartest beings in the universe claimed Mixie had no limits to his power. So they had to get another imp who had no limits to their power as well, and I think we know who that is. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Batmite. Now Batmite also gets in this really powerful state as well, and they go peer relative. Now eventually, with the added on power from the rest of the team, they were able to defeat him. But it goes to show how powerful Batmite is, going relative to a god who is going to erase everything. Now the next instance I'm going to talk about wasn't as successful because they were teaming up, and this comic is world's funnest. Now what really sparks these guys to go off in this comic is when Batman and Superman catch criminals. Now out of nowhere, they both break free and Batman and Superman have to do activities to stop them. And now after this, it's revealed Batmite and Mixie were involved in this, but they both begin to argue over who made their hero do more work. And after that, it gets a bit out of hand. Mixie accidentally kills Batman in front of Batmite, and then it all goes downhill from there. Batmite kills Superman, the League tries to stop them, then Mixie just solos the whole League. Although these guys are relative, Mixie gets angry. They both begin to grow larger than the entire Earth, and then fight with it. Eventually, the Spectre tries to stop them, one of the strongest beings in DC, and then he gets one shot. They begin to play with whole galaxies and rip apart the entire universe. They blow up the Phantom Zone, a plane beyond the concepts of space and time, then go to the 5th dimension where Mixie one-shots the place, and they're still not done having fun. Back at Apocalypse, where Darkseid's getting ready to start war, Mixie and Batmite pull up. Darkseid tries to Omega Beam them, doesn't work, and then they blow up the entire realm, including Darkseid, destroying heaven, the entire sphere of gods, claiming that the multiverse isn't big enough for them. them. They travel to the real world, and then Mixie gets so mad that he one-shots the totality of everything, leaving only Batmite and Mixie the only people in existence. Now after this, they end up remaking everything and plan on doing the same thing next Tuesday, but I want to talk about something. Now, although I don't necessarily agree with this, the author has stated that when Mixie obliterated everything, this was in reference to all of DC, like every single DC character was erased by Mixie. So yeah, if you take it at a grain of salt, it really shows how powerful these two imps really are. And I think that's it for Batmites. Definitely one of the crazy sides of DC. Batmite's also pretty powerful in the animated series too. He's rebooted the whole thing, but this video's revolved around comics, and that should be it.
What's up, my comic comrades? For those of you who are regulars here on the channel, you may have been wondering why it's been so long since we've talked about the main Batman title. Well, we recently asked ourselves the same question and decided to rectify this problem with the full breakdown of Chip Zdarsky and Jorge Jimenez's failsafe story arc in Batman issues 125 through 130. I'll tell you guys right up front, this creative team is killing it so far with the Batman title. They're really putting Bruce Wayne Batman through the ringer in this opening story arc, as he's been getting his butt handed to him throughout, making the failsafe story one of the most compelling and fun Batman stories we've read in a while. But we'll stop the teasing and let you guys see for yourself. Roll the bumper. Alright friends, since we're covering 6 issues, we're gonna go through them a little bit quicker than normal. The failsafe story kicks off in issue 125 of Batman. On the first page, we see a flashback of Alfred in the Batcave as he hears an alarm go off. He then walks towards it as it fades to black. We then learn in present time that Bruce is having dreams of the 3 Jokers killing the Bat family. He wakes up and calls Selina, who he recently broke off a marriage with, but he misses her and wants to talk to her. However, he finds out that Valmont, aka Ghostmaker, is over and she clearly just slept with him. Bruce then says, "I've gotta go," clearly being upset. As the issue continues, we see someone's murdering wealthy people all around Gotham. We find out that someone is Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. Penguin literally has a video message saying, "I am killing anyone in Gotham who has inherited over $5 million, unless they give that money away to people of the city." Basically, he's trying to get rid of generational wealth, and saying you should only be wealthy if you've earned it yourself, which is ironic because the Penguin inherited his family's fortune, but hey, Billy. Batman and Tim Drake Robin then go to a gala that the Penguin's gonna crash to try to stop him. They ultimately do, but not without Tim Drake getting shot in the neck by one of the Penguin's thugs, forcing Bruce to drop Drake off at an emergency room, being sure to take him out of his Robin costume before so they don't know he's Robin. After this, Batman goes to visit the Penguin, who is in the hospital dying. You see the Penguin Bruce was fighting at the gala was actually Clayface working for him, as the real Penguin is slowly dying in the hospital bed from mercury poisoning. As the two have one final discussion, the Penguin says, "Yeah, I'm killing all the billionaires, but I left you for last, you know," as he buzzes for the nurse while taking a cyanide pill, killing himself while simultaneously framing Batman for his murder as the nurses come in. The issue then ends with us seeing the same beat from the first page of the issue, but in present time in the abandoned Batcave under Wayne Manor, as we see a pod come out from the ground saying, "Online, failsafe online," giving us our first appearance of failsafe. This, my friends, brings us to issue 126. On the first page of the issue, we see Tim Drake Robin has lived, and not only that, is bandaged up and back on the mean streets of Gotham against Batman's wishes. We see Bruce go back to his cave with narration saying, "I still don't dream. Not really. Not like they do. I'm uneasy. It's not just the Joker nightmares. I couldn't marry Selina. I can't afford that level of distraction. But I look at the rest, at Tim, Barbara. They deserve love and happiness. And I don't think they truly understand that this life won't allow for it. It'll all get taken away at some point. It never ends. Even Cobblepot's death just created a void where lower level thugs get the chance to rise up. More enemies, unending, as we see Batman looking at his monitor with Failsafe creeping up behind him over his left shoulder. Failsafe then attacks, at which point he starts handing Bruce his booty, literally throwing Bruce around like a rag doll, to the point where he has to use the Batmobile to drag his sorry butt out of there. But Failsafe just follows Bruce into the streets, and the whole time Bruce is just thinking to himself, what is this thing? It isn't human. It's made, which means it could be unmade. But that doesn't matter because Failsafe continues to lay into Bruce, at which point, luckily for Bruce, the Bat family shows up, such as Cassandra Cain, Stephanie Brown, Duke Thomas, Tim Drake, and even good old Dick Grayson. But the combined might of the Bat family cannot put a dent into Failsafe. He's just laying them out left and right. Meanwhile, Tim Drake Robin throws Bruce in the Batmobile to try to get him to Leslie Thompson to save his life, as Bruce has been beaten to near death by Failsafe. But Failsafe is able to tap into their comms and knows what their plan is, so he corners Leslie so she can't meet up with Batman at the cave. Once at the cave, Batman tries to walk by himself, which he's barely able to do, telling Tim, I know what I have to do, and I have to do it alone. As he walks into a cave, within his cave, saying to himself he wouldn't understand. None of them would. The lengths I've gone to. I've softened, surrounded myself with children. But in my early days, God help me, in my early days, I went too far. Failsafe is familiar. But familiar doesn't mean the same thing when you have a mind that remembers everything. It's an abbreviation, a fault line running clean across my memory. There's a ticking deep in my head like a clock, like I've done this to myself. As we see Bruce tap into the Zero-Nar side of his personality, which is a personality he developed to take over in the event of a psychological attack. With Bruce coming out introducing himself to Robin saying, "It's okay, boy, it's me, it's the Batman," as he's donned the Zero-Nar costume. Now that's where issue 126 ends, but before we move on to issue 127, it's time for some stress relief. That moment of glorious slice and dice therapy is courtesy of legit quality Japanese steel made by today's sponsor, Kamikoto. I'm personally not that much of a chef.
Good for him for the sponsorships, but y'all already know for a hot dog bar going to the Buy Me a Coffee. It's easy to find, just look for it, it's right there.
Legit the sharpest knives I've ever seen, which is one of the many reasons these knives are used by Michelin star chefs all over the world. Not to mention stressed out YouTube hosts. Each knife is individually inspected and comes with a lifelong guarantee. And as you can see, these Kamikoto Japanese steel knives come in this heavy duty ash wood box, which not only helps to keep them in great condition, but also makes it a great gift, especially with Christmas knocking on our door. Kamikoto has several special offers going on right now, and on top of that, they're offering variant viewers an extra $50 off any purchase when you use the discount code variant. Just check out kamikoto.com/variant. Again, that's kamikoto.com/variant and use code variant for a bonus $50 off. Now let's get back to the Batman failsafe story with issue 127. At the beginning of this issue, we get a flashback on the first 2 pages from the events of JLA Tower of Babel, a storyline in which the Justice League discovers that Batman has a contingency plan to take each one of them down if they ever got out of line. Plans that were stolen by Ra's al Ghul, almost leading to the League's defeat. Superman is talking to Bruce, pissed off, saying, "Take the damn mask off or I'll take it off for you." Bruce then turns around while taking the mask off, saying, "I made a mistake, Clark, but the mistake wasn't keeping the files. The League, if controlled, could decimate the planet. My mistake was in not keeping them secure enough." Clark then just looks at Bruce saying, "Amazing. So let me ask you this. What's your contingency plan for yourself? What's the plan to take down Batman?" Bruce responds, "It's you, Clark. It's the Justice League." Clark then tells him, "Really? And how does the League take down the man who has planned for us? Tell me the truth, damn it. In a world where you know every move, who's to stop the Batman?" Basically telling us that Superman himself knows they can't stop Batman if need be, because in a world where Batman knows you exist, he knows every move and is already 10 steps ahead of you. It's just crazy that Superman is straight up like, how are we supposed to beat you when you know every move? After this, we are brought back to present where Tim Drake is getting acquainted with the Zero-Nar version of Batman, where he tells Tim, "Your Batman has called on me to save everyone. I'm better than Bruce. He created me within our mind. A backup version of Batman stripped free of Bruce Wayne. I'm our protection against psychological attacks. He thought, rightfully, that I created Failsafe, because he could never create the thing to stop Batman if he ever went too far." Tim asks, "You know how to stop it?" Batman responds, "Unfortunately, I erased that from my memory, knowing your Batman would call on me." So essentially, after that conversation Bruce had with Clark during the Tower of Babel story, Bruce knew that the only person that could take him down if he got out of line was himself. So he created an AI robot version of himself that was made to take him down if he ever went rogue. And once the news started reporting that Batman killed the Penguin, which obviously isn't true, Failsafe was activated to stop Batman. After this, Failsafe eventually makes his way back to the Batcave, where him and Zero-Nar start fighting. Tim Drake tries to help Batman, but it's to no avail. When Zero-Nar says that Robin and the Bat family are not family but soldiers in his army, the normal Bruce side of his consciousness activates again, saying, "I let you out because I thought you could deactivate Failsafe." Zero-Nar responds, "I created him. I can stop him." But Bruce just says, "He knows your tricks. He's trying to stop the Batman you know, the pure Batman you are, but I am Batman and Bruce Wayne. And Tim isn't my soldier. He's my son," as the Bruce consciousness takes over again. But it doesn't matter because after this, Failsafe continues to decimate Batman, like putting him inches away from death's door. Literally, he's laying on the ground, not able to move. But luckily, Nightwing had Oracle call in reinforcements, with Batman laying on the floor, not able to move, saying to himself, "I hear him." When he means it, his voice is a boom, as we see a silhouette say, "I'm going to need you to back away from my friend." With Bruce saying to himself, a Midwestern boom that tells even the cynics everything will be alright. Failsafe then looks at the silhouette saying, "I urge you to fly away." But on the last page of the comic, we see it's Superman in all of his glory, with Bruce saying, "Superman is here." This brings us to issue 128 of Batman, where at the beginning of the issue, we see Superman square off against Failsafe as he ignites kryptonite blades. At this point, Superman is forced to fly away and use long long-range attacks like his heat vision to try to bring Failsafe down. All while Batman is on the floor, not able to move. Bruce says to himself, it's a feint to push Clark away. I'm in hell. I know the moves. I see what's coming and I can't stop it. I can't save my friend. As we see, Failsafe has tricked Superman into coming after him so he could surprise attack him with a kryptonite sword from his back. That's right, Failsafe one-shots Superman. At this point, Green Arrow arrives trying to use a trick arrow on Failsafe, but that doesn't work. Then another Justice League powerhouse arrives, Mother freaking Martian Manhunter, who punches Failsafe out of Wayne Manor. At this point, Hawkgirl and Black Canary also arrive, with Superman laying there dying as he has a kryptonite blade in his abdomen. Batman is able to muster up enough strength to remove the shard from his friend and bandage him up, but he says this will only stop the bleeding. He's infected with it now, dead in hours if not treated. With Failsafe currently distracted by Martian Manhunter, Hawkgirl, and Black Canary, Green Arrow and Tim get Superman and Batman to the Javelin. Arrow then tells Tim the plane basically flies itself, as Tim is put in charge to get Superman and Batman medical attention ASAP, so they don't die. Meanwhile, Failsafe is soloing Martian Manhunter, Hawkgirl, Black Canary, and Green Arrow. It's just crazy how powerful Failsafe is. Anyway, this fight eventually ends up in Gotham with Failsafe still doing his thing, beating the ever-living crap out of the Justice League and the Bat family, while Bruce gets enough strength to stand up and tell Tim, get Clark to the Fortress of Solitude. Everything you need to make him whole will be there. You're Robin. You will save him. I am proud of you, Tim, of the man you've become. Do not worry about me. I'll survive this. As he jumps out of the jet, falling into the sea, activating a device that allows Aquaman to find and bring him to Atlantis to help him recover in a specialized tank. However, when Bruce finally wakes up from recovering, Aquaman informs him that he's been out for 2 weeks and Failsafe now has full control over Gotham. Not only that, he's still looking for Bruce. As Aquaman says, Bruce, he wants you to know, he wants the world to know, Gotham is his, and you need to come and get it. And this brings us to issue 129. In issue 129, we see narrations from Batman say, I feel it from across the world, from deep in the seas. Gotham screams. Failsafe has locked the city down. No one in, no one out. He's destroyed my family. He's laid waste to anyone who could help. He's created my nightmare scenario. A Gotham where around every corner is a Joe Chill. Every alley is crime alley. I know he's not programmed to kill, that much was obvious from how he took out everyone in our initial fights. But he spread gasoline throughout Gotham and turned a blind eye to the fires. My city is burning and I am underwater. As we're brought back to Batman watching the news of Gotham in Atlantis. Aquaman says this is bad. Other Leaguers have tried to get to him, but he set traps all around and throughout the city, taking each one out as they go in. People are getting hurt, Bruce, so I've got to ask, what is this thing? Bruce thinks to himself, it's youthful arrogance. It's paranoia. He then says to Aquaman, it's my fault, Arthur. My subconscious created Failsafe to stop me if I ever went too far. If Batman ever willingly took a life. He knows my plans. He knows my moves. He's faster and stronger than I am, all by design. He lay dormant, his program scanning news and chatter for signs of my going too far. I didn't know it, but Alfred was in charge of resetting his activation in case of false alarms. But Alfred is gone, so there was no one to stop it. Explaining what the first page of Batman issue 125 was, with Alfred hearing a beep in the Batcave. Aquaman then says, and now you're killing Gotham. And this thing knows your moves, knows you'll come here. You've endangered Atlantis, Bruce. Batman thinks to himself, there's nothing I could say. He's right. Giving up would stop all of this. Dying would stop this. Meanwhile, we see Failsafe has taken over Oracle's mind, using her as a human computer, while simultaneously running scans of all the ways Batman will try to beat him, saying time travel to unmake Failsafe, too dangerous to the timeline. Flee Earth to draw away, perhaps enlist alien entities. Activate unfinished Omega armor, 0 options involved to save you, as he says this to the Bat family held prisoner by Failsafe. Long story short, Aquaman sets out to distract Failsafe, who obviously ultimately comes to Atlantis to find Batman, but ends up becoming a hostage. Failsafe then demands to the Atlanteans to tell him where Batman is or he'll kill Aquaman, so of course they do. But to their surprise, he's gone already. That's right, Batman has made his way to the Watchtower. But this is Failsafe we're talking about here, an AI robot version of Batman who also makes his way to the Watchtower in space. Once Failsafe arrives, Batman grabs a gun from the Justice League Armory, a gun from New Genesis, and he shoots Failsafe with it, but it only goes through the outer casing of Failsafe's armor. The battle continues, but ultimately ends with Batman teleporting Failsafe back to the Hall of Justice on Earth as the Watchtower explodes, with Batman floating alone in space with no Justice League Javelin jets to save him. He literally says, damn it, Failsafe destroyed any means of escape for me. No ships, no teleporters, just cold death, as Batman is floating in space alone with limited oxygen as the issue ends. And this brings us to the 6th and final issue of the Failsafe story arc with issue 130. The issue opens up with Batman continuing to float through space with his oxygen levels at 4%. But he uses compressed gas that feeds his grappling gun to give him some propulsion towards a damaged Javelin. But even though the Javelin can't fly, Batman is able to take the ship's oxygen supply, which should give him 12 hours of normal breathing. So he straps it to his leg and then removes one of the boosters from the ship to boost himself in increments from the moon back to Earth. After 12 hours, he makes it to Earth's atmosphere and then re-enters Earth's atmosphere like a damn space shuttle. Literally, he's on fire and everything, but luckily for Bruce, he says, my suit can take the heat. heat, but the oxygen mask can't, as he rips off his trunks and wraps it around his face. Once back in Earth's atmosphere, he opens his cape up, gliding back down to Earth like a fiery bat landing on his feet. That's right, Batman just fell from the moon back to Earth with nothing but some oxygen and his normal bat suit, and then just stood up like, let's get to work. He then makes his way back to the Fortress of Solitude, where Tim Drake is watching Clark recover. Bruce walks in and says, Tim, Clark, I need access to your workshop, with Robin saying, whoa, I thought you wanted me to keep Superman away from you. And what happened to you? Bruce just looks at him saying, I fell from the moon. Tim just looks at him shocked, but Bruce just looks over at Clark saying, you're good? He replies, not 100%, but getting there. Batman replies, good. I'll need you to buy me some time while I end this once and for all, as he watches Failsafe approach the Fortress of Solitude. Superman then suits up in one of his armors that he has at the fortress since he's not fully healed yet and says, Failsafe, I wasn't prepared for you last time, but I am now. Stoops is able to get a few punches in, but Failsafe releases his circuitry from his arm saying, I know everything about you, Superman, even things you don't know. Kryptonians, like humans, have pressure points, as he uses his wiring to infiltrate Superman's helmet, touching pressure points on Superman, which involuntarily sets off his heat vision, causing it to reflect back to him because he's wearing a helmet. That's right, Failsafe just soloed Superman a second time in a row. Failsafe is by far one of the baddest characters to ever set foot in DC. Meanwhile, back in the Fortress of Solitude, Bruce tells Tim his plan. He says to Tim, in the Watchtower, I managed to hit Failsafe with the new Genesis Element X laser, creating a small hole in his upper back. So now I can access his programming through the breach with the nanobots. The problem is that a normal virus won't stop him. His programming will reject anything seen as hostile. The most we can hope for is to subtly shift his traits, introduce a personality extension that won't be immediately attacked by his original program. Bruce then says, this thing is designed to defeat Batman, but it doesn't stand a chance against Batman and Robin. As the two put on their masks and charge Failsafe, with Bruce saying, old moves, come back. Dick always went off book. Jason hated practicing them, but Tim, he loved it, the teamwork. We had each other's backs, but this is different. We're not teaming up against ex-cons and question mark shirts, or mindless brutality of a Killer Croc. We're up against myself without restraint or weakness. Well, let's see if we could change that, as Batman puts his virus into the hole he made in Failsafe earlier. But let's pause for a second. Bruce literally said, referring to Failsafe, we're up against myself without restraints or weakness. Meaning Failsafe is essentially the most perfect form of Batman. A Batman that has no weakness and prep time built in, which quite possibly makes Failsafe one of the most deadly characters to ever set foot in DC. I mean, he's literally soloed the entire Justice League and several other heroes that came after him, and he beat Superman 2 times in a row. And easily, might I add. Anyway, once the virus is implanted into Failsafe, he asks, what did? Bruce then says, a small thing, an additional bit of programming, compassion. It's what separated us. I may be a Dark Knight, I may be vengeance, but I still care.